Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Cycles of Time podcast. This is your weekly forecast for August 4th to 10th, 2025. And this week, the themes are the Lionsgate full moon in Aquarius and a Grand Trine Kite. There's a lot going on this week, and let's get into it. Let's just jump right in. Before we do, actually, I did want to mention that I am hosting a Leo season breathwork session and community reflection session on Zoom. And that is something that I do for my paid subscribers on Substack. We do a monthly session where we dive into the archetypes and the energies of the season that we're currently in, the human design gates, the elements, the dynamic energies of the season, and then jump into a 40-minute guided conscious connected breathwork session where we really integrate these themes and energies into our bodies. And this week's theme is radiance and courage, focusing on the heart, which is ruled by Leo. And I really do love hosting breathwork sessions that focus on the heart's radiance, because the lungs kind of cradle our heart. And when you do some active conscious breathwork, you can really feel your heart being cradled by your lungs. And so I welcome you to join us. There's a link in the show notes and you can register there for that Zoom session. It'll be at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on Wednesday on Zoom. And yeah, I hope you can make it. Jumping ahead into the week, the pulse of this week is really, this Aquarius full moon on Saturday, the Lionsgate portal, which I'll talk a bit about here, which is kind of a controversial topic in astrology. It's like one of the more new age astrology topics that doesn't exactly really exist, or maybe it does. As someone with a lot of Leo placements, I really do enjoy the concept of Lionsgate. And just kind of the synchronicity of 8-8, the day 8-8, and the infinity symbols. And there's definitely some problems with leaning too far into that perhaps, but basically 8-8 is called the Lionsgate portal, and it's a date that's celebrated by many in the spiritual world. It's a time of amplified manifestation and cosmic downloads, and kind of a heart-centered awakening, tapping into the fact that Leo rules the heart. And the imagery is rich. The sun is in its own sign of Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun in traditional astrology. And the number 8 is looping like infinity. And also the star Sirius is rising in the dawn, which aligns with the earth and the sun. And so some people speak of the Lionsgate as an ancient Egyptian alignment, and others just see it as a modern New Age portal. But whether the history is airtight or more poetic than factual, there's some symbolism in this week of the Lion's Gate. So the full moon is arriving a day after 8-8, and that's why I'm calling this episode the Lion's Gate full moon. Full moon in Aquarius, opposite from the sun in Leo. It's really highlighting this polarity between self-expression, courage of the self versus collective expression, and courage to be existing within the collective. And one of my favorite astrologers, Caroline Casey, I'm taking a class with her on the Shift Network right now, and she's just awesome. She wrote Visionary Activist Astrology, and that was one of the first books that really blew my mind about astrology's outer planetary transits in mundane astrology and how they've affected world events and she's just an incredible, incredible thinker and speaker and writer. But one of the things that she always says is believe nothing, entertain possibilities. So I bring that here because when we're talking about the Lion's Gate, you don't have to take the Lion's Gate as literal cosmic fact or historical fact to work with it necessarily. And I invite you to treat the Lion's Gate as a beautiful mythic frame this week. Kind of an excuse to open your heart wider and align your actions with your deeper heart purpose, and imagine yourself as part of something greater than the craziness and the minutia of the moment. If nothing else, this week's Lion's Gate full moon offers us a reason to pause and set intentions in spirit of heartfelt courage. Courage, the word comes from the Latin word cor, the French word coeur, which is meaning heart. And so this is a week to sit with, and we're in the middle of Leo season, so it's definitely a week with so much happening with all of the planets, and we'll get into that in a minute, but a really good week to tap into your heart, really touch your heart as much as you can this week. Just put a hand on your heart, feel it beating, do some deep breaths that cradle your heart, because that is really, for me, what Lion's Gate is all about. So in addition to the full moon this week, there's a lot going on with the full moon, but the week also has some wild astrology. We have a grand air trine, which locks Mars in Libra, Uranus in Gemini, and Pluto in Aquarius into a really flowing aspect of quick thinking and radical insight and transformative force. Mars is entering Libra on, I believe, Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesday the 6th. And so once Mars enters Libra, the cardinal air sign, it's going to be making this trine with Uranus in the first degree of Gemini and Pluto in the first degree of Aquarius. And so grand trines are, this perfect triangle across the wheel of, your birth chart of the chart of time, and trines are all about kind of harmonious flowing energy. If you think about, like, with this aspect, if you think about a wheel that has a kind of weighted triangle in the middle of the wheel, and you think about like how that would make the wheel spin faster, if there was some weights at each point of the triangle, as opposed to like a square in the middle of a wheel. It might maybe be a little more clunky and require more pushing to get it to turn. I would like to look at aspects as this kind of physical nature of like how a wheel would be aided in its turning. And so a trine, or especially a grand trine with three trines coming together, can create a certain speed of motion. And so that's happening this week. It's coming into perfection. And then we also have Mars, when it enters Libra, making a direct opposition to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And they're both retrograding back through Aries right now, but Mars will be directly opposing them as soon as that warrior planet enters Libra. And this extends the trine, this grand trine, and creates the kite's spine. I'll have a picture on my Substack on cyclesoftime.substack.com, and I'll also post it on my Instagram, because kites are fairly rare formations. Grand trines are fairly rare, but then you add this kind of pointed element. It looks like a kite, traditional kite flying in the sky. And so the trine is extended kind of between the Saturn and Neptune in conjunction in Aries, and then they're sextile to Uranus and Gemini. They're also sextile to Pluto and Aquarius, so they're making kind of that mini triangle. And then Mars is kind of creating this spine of the kite, and that adds a little bit of pressure and structure to the free-flowing dynamism of this moment's grand trine. So this week, I'd say that vision needs to be matched with discipline. Whatever you are coming upon as far as breakthroughs, there's definitely potential for breakthrough this week, potential for a new type of philosophy and a new type of perspective to come into your world. But that needs to be then matched with a certain degree of structure. And same thing with any kind of new inspiration that comes through. It's going to need to hold up under real world testing, with that Saturn in Mars opposition kind of holding down the fort. The two malefics kind of opposing each other and mirroring each other, as we also have this really quick flowing energy around the rest of the sky. So full moon plus that this week definitely makes it a week that is not for sleeping, but definitely for resting, definitely for carving out some time, more time than you might think you would need to pause and to breathe and to reflect and to plan for things that might not go exactly how you think they're going to go. So in the medicine wheel, we are continuing the transition from fire to water, from the high heat of the south to the emotional harvest of the west. And then in the whooshing 5-element cycle, we're also in this transitional period from fire to earth. So we're moving from summer's fire in both of these wheels to the yin elements of earth and water in the various wheels. And so this week, I'd say, is a good week to clarify your role within the larger pattern with that Leo Aquarius opposition of the moon and sun, and also with this transitional energy going from yang to yin. It's a good time for clarification. And then in human design, the sun is traveling through gate 7 for the majority of this week, which is known as the role of the self in interaction, or it's a leadership gate, also known as the army, kind of like the what do you call it? The leader of the army, but someone who leads from within, maybe like a chief of staff type of role is what gate 7 is referred to. And so, yeah, there's a lot of energies in this week's forecast that are about kind of seizing the momentum, directing it with intention, and taking a little bit of time to pause and recognize that in the wheel of the year, we're moving into a more of a yin, more of kind of a feminine part of the year after raging fires of summer. And there's been several astrologers that I've read about this week who have said this will be the hardest week of 2025. Some Instagram, doom and gloom, shock and awe. That's never fun to read. It's definitely clickbait, though. I can't say that this week with an Aquarius Leo polarity full moon and this very rare kite formation where you don't know what's going to happen, and a very erratic kind of air focused trine, Grand Trine. There's a lot happening. Will it be the worst week? I certainly hope not. Some other astrologers that I follow have said that maybe this will be a week that we've kind of gone through the worst. We've gone through the fire, and now we're kind of seeing the aftermath, perhaps. We're seeing what is going to come of it. There will be a clarity. There will be a breakthrough. There will be a certain leveling, which is sometimes harder than just going through it. It's like when the adrenaline fades and you've been kind of running through the fire, and then suddenly you get a moment to stop, and it's just like whoosh, what has been going on. So definitely take some time this week to take a bath, take like a magnesium or Epsom salt bath, go on some good walks, hug a pet, appreciate these small moments. I would say it's slow down a little bit if you can. So I like thinking about the kite formation as kind of like, kites have to catch an updraft of wind in order to fly. Otherwise they just come crashing down. And so I think about this week's full moon and the Grand Trine Kite energetics as an invitation to catch the updraft of change, stay alert for the updraft of change and the positive things that are going to come from changes in your life. And harness those air currents and allow them to lift you up to steer toward the future that you want to inhabit, rather than getting freaked out by the fact that you are a kite or you're in a kite and crashing down to the ground. So you have some agency within this. So that is what's going on in the skies. I'll dive into it a little deeper. Again, if you want to see some of these images of this Grand Trine and kite formation, this opposition between the sun and the moon, kind of the astrology of the moment, you can check out my Substack at cyclesoftime.substack.com. That's also where you can register for this week's breathwork session. And that's also available at astrosomatics.com, my website. You can just click the breathwork book a session and the breathwork session. So anyway, let's move on to the sun. Tomorrow may rain, so I follow the sun. The sun is what we are following in this podcast most of the time as far as the human design transits. I listen to some human design influencers and people in that world who are looking at all of the planetary transits and all of the gates that they're currently in, and it's beautiful, and it's so poignant. And the deeper I get into human design, the more I'm tempted to also add in all of the different gates for where all of the planets are when I talk about the astrology transits. But that would be a really long podcast, and it can also get quite overwhelming to really grok that much information. And so it's so interesting because I started this project of astrosomatics several years ago, 3 years ago, as a full and new moon. I would write about the full and new moons each month and the polarities and oppositions between the different signs that are highlighted by the full and new moons. And it was so rooted and so grounded. And I miss that in some ways. I miss the beginner's mind kind of way of going about things, because I love absorbing new information and synthesizing information, but I do recognize that sometimes it can get really kind of overwhelming. But I appreciate all of you out there who have given me feedback that this is serving you and this is something that is interesting to you. And it's why I stick with the human design sun gates as far as just the solar transits, to really focus on the energy of the week, as the sun is a very important planet, celestial body in human design, with the most neutrinos kind of streaming through and affecting the chart of the moment the most, I guess. And so I like it because it breaks down the zodiac season as well. So anyway, I digress. We'll start with the sun and where it's moving through this week. And the sun is moving from the gate of retreat, which we've been in since last week, since last Thursday, July 31st. And that's known as retreat or privacy. And it's moving from there into gate 7, which is known as the army, or the role of the self in interaction. And so this transition is kind of like the lion who's been in his den, taking a nap, chilling out, like coming out of a little bit of like leadership momentum and saying, oh, I need to like actually think about what it is, how it is that I'm going to lead. Then we come back out, and guess what? Lion is the king of the jungle, so Lion is in a leadership role again. And this time it's gate 7, which is it's a stepping out role. It feels like the moment when you've been off stage for a while and then the lights dim and you sense that it's your cue to step out back onto stage. So during gate 33, the gate of retreat, how did that show up for you since last Thursday through the weekend, through Tuesday of this week? We're still in that energy. The sun gives us a chance here in gate 33 to take a pause when the outside world feels really loud, and close the door, clear the table, and just sit with the raw pieces of our own story. It is in the I Ching, it is known as retreat as well. And in the Gene Keys, it has the shadow of forgetting, the gift of mindfulness, and the city of revelation. And during this time for me over the past weekend, I've taken time to look back over what's unfolded recently, conversations, missteps, little wins, and I've let them really settle into my body. I took a lot of time over this past weekend. I was dog sitting and had multiple dogs to tend to, so I didn't do too much, but I spent time with pets, spent time going on walks, spent time with the last days of Mars and Virgo, cleaning out my house, doing really deep clean and rearranging rooms. And I did a really nice, gentle yoga class, and just really tried to be in my body as much as I could and read some books. And it's been a nice energy to transit through in the middle of Leo season here. And it's definitely been emotional as well. I mean, we have Venus and Jupiter in Cancer, so there's some emotions flowing through at the moment as well. So in that moment of retreat, gotta cry a little bit too, right? I'm curious how it has shown up for you. Sometimes it's in these moments of retreat where we can see the patterns and really remember what's actually important instead of chasing what's urgent. Always having a to-do list. Sometimes it's nice to just take a beat because everything seems pretty urgent these days, I would say. And it's hard to keep up with. I think everybody I've talked to is just pretty exhausted. So yeah, it's hard to find clarity in the middle of constant motion. And when you give yourself the grace to step away a little bit, maybe go out into nature, just like eat food without scrolling through your phone at the same time, whatever it means to retreat from the onslaught of constant information. I hope you've had a chance over the past few days to give yourself a little space, a little privacy, a little retreat. And if you haven't, try to find a little bit of space Monday or Tuesday while the sun is still in this gate. Because when the sun enters gate 7 on Wednesday, that inner space that we've been hopefully connecting with starts to kind of naturally point outward a little bit more, point to other people, collaborations, connections with other people. And the question for gate 7 is, now that I've found my own center again, how do I show up in the larger pattern? And what role do I play? And the I Ching 7 is known as the army, but it's not really known for control or conquest or dictatorial type of army type of thing. It's about belonging to something bigger than yourself and focusing on your own role in the revolution, but also kind of moving with others in a way that serves the whole. The Gene Keys describes Gate 7's path from the shadow of division to the gift of guidance to the city of virtue. And this tells the story that real leadership isn't about being the loudest or the most forceful, but about holding a steady and trustworthy place that others can align with. So leading from within the group, guiding. So it's very much a guiding role, virtuous guiding. And so over the past week, retreat and privacy hopefully gave you some inner clarity. And then this week's Gate 7 gives the call to listen to that, what came through for you, what, thinking about, we went from 31 into 33 during Leo season, and 31 was the gate of influence, and it was almost just like you are an influential being just by being a lion, right? Just by being this animal that is able to roar. But then after that, you go into the cave, and it's like, what was I roaring about? How is that? Wow, I can really affect people. Okay, like this is big. I need to kind of take a moment. And then 7 comes out, we come out and it's gate 7, and it's just like, okay, I'm here to be a humble guide and find my role of leadership, because everyone has one, but that doesn't mean that you're going to have to be up on Pride Rock. It's more like you're walking around with the animals, hearing what people have to say, what people need, and gathering your own inner strength to lend to the collective and kind of determining that best place to step into your leadership. So the sun will be in gate 7, the gate of the role of the self in interaction, or the army, when the full moon is across the sky. And the gate that's directly across from gate 7 is gate 13, and it's known as the listener or the narrator, and it is in Aquarius. This polarity, the 13-7 polarity across the wheel that this full moon is lighting up, is the polarity of leading versus listening, and a reminder that the two are really inseparable when leadership is rooted in truth. Leadership comes from listening. So in the I Ching, gate 7, the army is the type of leadership that aligns with the personal will with the good of the whole. And then gate 13 across the sky is known as fellowship with men, which is the bond that's formed when we listen to each other's stories and carry shared memory of where we've been. So the army and fellowship with men, they kind of have a similar vibe to them. Oftentimes polar opposite gates do have similar energy. They're united within that polarity, but they do have unique differences too. And when I look at the sun in Leo, where Leo's at home, it is about this individual expression shining as a general or a leader within the army. And then gate 13 is really about like having and kind of node-based equilibrium where there isn't a general, there isn't a leader. Aquarius is known as the sign of the collective. So it's a certain it's a way that we don't oftentimes do things, where it's a truly egalitarian, but not in the sense that everybody has the exact same role, but that we just recognize that everybody has a different role, and it doesn't require that certain leadership to interconnect those roles. So in the gene keys, gates 13, where the full moon is, moves from discord to discernment to empathy. And this shows how deep listening transforms misunderstanding into connection. Discord at the shadow level is where you're listening to so many different opinions. You have a fellowship with your fellow man, and you're listening to what everybody has to say, but it can just sound like a lot of noise. And so if you're able to discern and kind of put together the pieces about what is being said, like let what is being said rise to the surface, and then at a higher level even than that, have empathy for what everybody is saying, but know that what the truth is in the collective will rise to the surface, and not get caught up in the noise of lots of conflicting information. Yeah, we can really transform a certain overwhelm and discord and misunderstanding into a deep connection. Together, gate 7 and 13 in this full moon sun opposition are forming a kind of call and response, where the sun in gate 7 is asking how you'll step forward with clarity and purpose as a sovereign, individual, heart-centered being. And the moon in gate 13 is answering that by reflecting the light of the sun, reflecting the wisdom that comes from collective memory, the collective conscious. And so it's a beautiful polarity, really. I think that Leos and Aquarians are so different. Sometimes you can look at these opposite signs, Virgos and Pisces and Geminis and Sagittarians, and they're so different, but they're also so the same in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of expression happening in this season. And I think the full moon in Aquarius each year is a very expressive time. And it can feel discordant. It can feel a little bit frenetic, because it's very much asking, like, who am I within the larger, greater picture? And I think that's something that we all have to ask ourselves right now. Leadership without listening really loses its compass, and listening without any discernment or direction can drift into a certain noise, like I said, a discord, or into nostalgia of like it's just all true, right? And so this full moon really demands that we lead by listening, and listen with direction as well. This moon is conjunct Pallas Athena, the asteroid, in Aquarius, which sharpens strategy and pattern recognition. Pallas is an asteroid that really is a discerning type of energy that listens with an ear for what fits and what doesn't, and is able to see the kind of substructure within the story that's being told. And this full moon is also squaring Lilith, Juno, and Vesta in Scorpio. So we have the dark node of the moon, Lilith, and we have the asteroids, Juno and Vesta. All of these female energies in the chart that I'm paying a lot more attention to these days, where Lilith is kind of raw and uncompromising truth about kind of exile and what's been silenced or denied. Juno is all about loyalty and commitment and equality in relationships. And Vesta is about what we hold sacred, what we sacrifice for, what we're devoted to in order to belong to something bigger. And so the squares to these three, from the full moon in Aquarius to all of these in Scorpio, are bringing a bit of friction, a bit of having to push that ball with the square center a little harder in order to get to the meat of what's being asked of us. And so in this way, I feel like this full moon is asking us to integrate truth telling and devotion, without losing ourselves in power struggles or old wounds. And so I thought that was an interesting square that's happening there. And I'd say that this lunation is going to challenge us to lead with both our voice and our ears, both stepping into our power and not shying away from it, but also remembering to listen. And full moons always bring this up. It's a polarity. It's like a back and forth, a ping pong match. And the more we've thought about this and contemplated this dynamic between leading and listening, the more integrated it might feel. It's about holding authority and empathy in equal measure, really being within the fellowship of men, but recognizing that if you have the capacity to step up right now into a leadership position, do it. I love the book Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. I've read it many times, and it's all about, it kind of starts out talking about burnout from a leadership perspective and how when some people do step into a leadership role, they are kind of idolized or put on a pedestal or expected to be perfect and expected to lead consistently. And what Adrienne Maree Brown really talks about is leadership in the sense of like how geese lead when they're in a flying V formation, which is not having a singular goose flying up against the headwinds where everybody else gets to take it a little easier right behind, but the geese actually trade out who is in the lead bird position. And this happens in nature all around, where there is, when one, there's a co-leadership, there's a mutual fellowship of leadership where it's not the responsibility of a singular person to maintain. I've always just really loved that so much. And I love how in that book, Adrienne really calls out the pressure that's put on leaders and why some people might shy away from leadership, because there's suddenly a pressure to be everything for everyone, say the right thing at every given time, and not a lot of support, the lonely at the top kind of thing. And I think that's especially true within activist communities, perhaps. And so I know that book has been incredibly popular, as her book Pleasure Activism, that's talking about how you don't have to be sad all the time and sacrificing everything in order to be an effective activist or make effective change. It's actually to the contrary. We need to bring pleasure and joy into the work that we do and remember why it is that we're doing it. And so, yeah, in this case, I would say tap into this type of emergent strategy if you are in the capacity to lead at this moment in time and you're sensing, like I am, that people are exhausted and scared and burnt out and overwhelmed right now. That it's, if you have some energy, jump in, and then don't think that that's going to mean that you're jumping in forever. Know that someone else will take the load off when you need a break. And that's how we have to move forward. That's a truly collaborative way. We can't be equal and all things for everybody all the time. And we can't always be on center stage without any reflection from and feedback from the communities that we are leading. So both voice and ears, both authority and empathy, lean into that during this full moon and listen to the feminine side. It might be a little under the surface. There might be some things that come up that are about like, well, I've tried that in the past, or like there's this unfairness. This isn't I've sacrificed so much already, and energies like that from Vesta and Juno and Lilith, that this kind of idea of like, well, I would, but I know that it's not going to work because it already hasn't been easy. And so that's the kind of friction that might come through. But knowing that Pallas Athena is there next to the moon, another female figure, Athena, the warrior, let's just, step into this full moon with that warrior energy of Athena while we remember to listen to the fellowship of our humans that are around us. All right. It's nice to have my voice back and actually be able to talk to you guys. And thanks for bearing with me last week as I just didn't have a voice. It was Gate of Retreat. It's so appropriate. Just like, nope, don't talk. But here we are. Planetary dances of the week. The song Blister in the Sun came into my head. High as a kite, I just might stop to check you out. because I don't talk about kites very much. Also, For the Benefit of Mr. Kite was another good kite song by the Beatles on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. A couple of kite songs, anyway, popping into my head. But the kite formation that's unfolding at around the same time as the full moon this week, you will hear about it if you're in kind of astrology worlds. It's a unique dynamic that's happening in the sky, and it's kind of supercharging this gate 7, gate 13 listening and speaking polarity. The kite is, kind of a greased up flow of the grand air trine, which again is Mars in Libra, Uranus in Gemini, and Pluto in Aquarius, all at the first degree. And it kind of takes that super fast moving energy, which is even more fast moving because they're all in air. And so it's just like, I think of it as just like, oh, I don't know how quick a tornado can move through air. It's just like whoosh, and then it's like over there, and then it's over there. There's kind of an unpredictability to it, but it's grounded a bit with an opposition here between Mars and then Saturn, and also Neptune. Mars in Libra, Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And so that anchor of the opposition within this Grand Trine kind of gives it direction and purpose. So the Grand Trine alone could feel like ideas and insights and conversations and breakthroughs that are just moving fast and freely, but kind of continuing to move through space like that tornado. It keeps touching down, it keeps being reactivated. And so this opposition to Saturn and Neptune in Aries from Mars that's across the Grand Trine, creating the kite's spine, really brings a need for focus and commitment and a clear vision, a clear dream to steer the energy. So it brings a little bit of groundedness to this breakthrough, change everything, move fast, like go wild tornado energy. And it's just like, oh no, here, let's just like tether it down. And in the context of the full moon, this kite's energy adds a little something. It kind of means that the listening of gate 13 and the leadership of gate 7 aren't happening in a vacuum. This grand air trine is opening up channels for breakthrough thinking, strategic alliances, and also conversations that could dramatically shift your perspective. Uranus, who has recently entered Gemini, is electrifying our minds and the social sphere. Mars, who's just entering Libra this week, brings initiative and drive and relationship dynamics into play. And then Pluto in Aquarius is pushing for deep truth, transformation in the collective, that Aquarian collective humanity level place. And so that's a pretty fantastic trine. There's a lot of power. I'd say Mars, Uranus, and Pluto are powerful planets, and then all of them in air, and the positions that they are in these air signs is pretty powerful. And then the opposition between Mars in Libra and Saturn and Neptune in Aries really asks, will you use this breakthrough insight to build something real, or will you let it stay as ungrounded dreaminess and nebulosity? We have both Saturn and Neptune in play, and they're different kinds of energies, and Mars is across the sky. Saturn loves to be in Libra, Mars loves to be in Aries, so they're kind of in these like opposite positions from where they like to be. They're both in detriment, and they don't like to be where they are, and they're seeing each other across the sky, being like maybe a little jealous, like, God, I wish I was just... Saturn's like, I wish I was just in like this really orderly, harmonious, Libran balanced place. And Mars is sitting in Libra in this balanced place that's a little too slow moving, a little too people pleasing, a little too focused on harmony. And it's like, get me into Aries. Like, I wish I was over there where Saturn is, able to take some action and actually make things happen. And so you have this polarity and this opposition between these two, and then they're also in the opposite signs where they like to be. And so that can feel frustrating. It can feel like it's not an easy chess move that we have to make in order to ground this breakthrough energy. But it also brings up a lot of beauty in what our responsibilities are. It asks us to get real, but it also has energies of exciting new potential, perhaps. that we're getting real about, and it's not just like the same old. So hopefully you can tap into some of the just like new perspective. Just we're so tired of just the same old thing, and it feels just like additive effects of like, oh my god, another headline that's the exact same, gives me the exact same feeling. I don't know how much longer I can take this. And then another one hits, and it's like waves just crashing in and crashing in. And maybe this Grand Trine will allow us to kind of maybe get a little hoverboard and like figure out how to walk on water a little bit. Figure out, here's a like a surfboard. Maybe I can try to surf this wave. Actually, this is kind of fun. And then it's like, well, now you're on the surfboard. Which direction are you going to point the nose of that thing so you don't just crash out and get back into being pounded by waves again? It's like, get on the thing, feel the breakthrough, feel the lack of limitation, and then immediately point it where you want to go. That's what this week is feeling like. So the kite really lifts this full moon's energy on Saturday into a higher altitude, and it makes it easier to see the big picture. But it also, just remember to steer. Kites need a driver. Surfboards need a driver. Otherwise, they're just flopping around and crashing. So don't lean too hard into the air trine without the grounding spine of that Mars-Saturn polarity. Otherwise, it could just be talk and vision and dreams spinning up like tornadoes without translating it into concrete movement. But this week there's a distinct opportunity to ground into concrete movement. But don't stay there either. Don't stay in this place of like, oh my god, like I'm in this kind of oppositional polarity, jealousy, like I wish I was over there, I wish this wasn't happening. There can be a certain weightiness this week too, and uncertainty or pressure, and when you're in that, if you're looking down at your feet, you're not going to be able to look up and see where you can catch that lift, like where the kite might be able to take you. So some powerful dynamics this week, some kind of oppositional energies, but I love this kite, actually. I think it's really, really cool. And I do know that there's certain mundane astrologers that have discussed kites as this type of formation in the sky as times when really just big stuff happens, weather events, tragedies, things of that nature. And so I don't want to be too optimistic here, but I do think that on a personal level, we can seize the day, seize the moment. Then you can look in your chart to see what houses you have these air signs, Aquarius and Libra and Gemini, and also where Saturn and Neptune are in Aries as well. So those are the four parts of your chart that you might want to look at to see which part of your life this might be affecting. But seize the day, seize the moment. Used well, this kite can really carry the listening and the fellowship of Gate 13 into visionary guidance through Gate 7, making the role of yourself within the fellowship of men, kind of into a clear plan of action that others can really rally behind. This week, just to recap here a little bit before we wrap up, this week has been a clear shift in tone from the relentless heat of summer, from the fire energy, and it's also the true cross-quarter day between summer solstice and fall equinox by degree this week when the sun is in Gate 7. I spoke about this cross-quarter day called Lammas or Lunasa in last week's episode, because it's celebrated widely on August 1st, just as like a day within the Gregorian calendar that we can celebrate Lunasa or Lammas, but in the truth of like where the halfway point is, it's at 15 degrees of Leo, and that's in Gate 7. So we can continue this celebration of Lammas. And I wrote about it a bit last week, but I do think of this holiday as one where gratitude and grief share equal relevance, as our ancestors cut the living grain for their consumption. Well, and we're grateful for the bread that they could bake with this, grateful for the first harvest, but also realizing that this first harvest also means a step closer to the death of winter. And so there's a sobering quality to it. Gratitude and grief in the same breath is a lot of where we're at. And that's the same energy as this full moon, the same energy as this kite formation, is gratitude and grief it coexisting together and allowing them to coexist together. So as we move into this energy, or we continue this energy in Lammas's first harvest, it's a good time to notice what has grown in your life since spring, what's ready to be shared with others, and ask yourself what you want to carry forward into the next season. It's a great time to acknowledge what you have built and what you can harvest from spring and summer's growth, even if it's still not fully formed. If there's some parts of it that can be reaped and harvested right now, it's a good time to do so. So, the beginning of this week, you might feel yourself in that inward, reflective, private space, and then kind of moving out into the world midweek, with Mars entering relational Libra, and also with the Sun moving into gate 7, the gate of the self in interaction. And yeah, just seeing what areas of your life you can take the lead in. Doesn't have to be a big thing, doesn't have to be massive, and also doesn't have to be forever. The quiet sorting through of recent happenings that's been happening behind the scenes might solidify into a truer sense of direction this week, and you might feel the urge to speak up and the need to listen more deeply than usual. So remember to do both. 2 ears, 1 mouth. That's what somebody told me once. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So listen twice as much as you talk this week. That would be wise. That's what the full moon's telling us. And the wisdom that you gather from others is super important in clarifying what it is that you have to offer. That's the vibe. And so this week, it rewards those who combine courage, their heart-centered, radiant self, with listening, keeping the pulse on the world around them, listening to the birds, listening to the snores of the dogs sleeping at the foot of the bed, listening to more than the news, hopefully, and letting what you are listening to, who you are listening to, inform your action, and infusing whatever inspiration comes through with a bit of a plan. Could be a feeling of lift in the air this week as the Grand Trine takes shape. It could feel like the wind at your sails if you're ready to catch it. And so watch out for opportunities for connection and collaboration, or a whole new approach or perspective this week. They might appear to you more easily, like that kind of touching down dust devil like energy of just like, here I am. Oh no, now I'm over here. But the key with those is to ground them and take some notes maybe this week of the things that pop through and then go away just as quickly. Like what felt meaningful, what felt had some kind of synchronicity or serendipity to it. And yeah, if you have your surfboard pointed in a certain direction, like, you have agency, decide which way you're pointing, keep 1 foot planted while you're pivoting. Just make sure that you have that structure this week so the inspiration doesn't drift away. And I've really been enjoying my altar practice of just putting a little word or a reminder, a little token, a little rock, whatever it is that I've found throughout the day that reminds me of something, and just really paying attention to these things right now, to the symbols and the omens that are out there in the world that are asking for you to notice them. So this week, yeah, it isn't a light one, but no surprises there. Have we had a light week at any time recently? Not really, but I don't think it's the worst week either. It's going to be different for everybody. There's a lot of variable kind of energy that's showing up this week, and the Leo Aquarius axis and the planetary geometries of the kite and the trine are inviting us into full self-expression and connecting our selfhood to the collective's evolution, kind of like the jewel drops of Indra's net. If you don't know about Indra's net, look it up. It's just a beautiful, beautiful tale of how everything is interconnected, and we are all radiant beings connecting in a web or a net of kind of node-based reality. So that is what I'll leave you with. I'm sending you all love and care this week, and hope to see you on Wednesday for the Leo season workshop and breathwork journey. And yeah, if I don't see you there, I'll be doing another one for Virgo season. And also thank you to everybody who's shared your interest in my kind of transit memoir writing offering that I suggested a couple weeks ago. I've gotten a lot of interest in that, and it has been so meaningful for me. So I'm putting that together, and we'll hopefully be launching that offering in the next couple of months. I don't have a deadline on it yet, but I do think that guiding through some memoir writing with some important transits seems like a really fun offering to do. So stay tuned for that. And please, if you're listening to this on a podcast player, if you give me a review, 5 stars would be awesome. It really does help get the word out if I have more, and I tend to not harp on this kind of stuff, but would love any kind of comments or hearts or feedback. If you're listening to this and got some value from it, also can share it with a friend. You can find me on Instagram at astrosomatics or Cycles of Time podcast. Subscribe on Substack at cyclesoftime.substack.com to get this podcast in your inbox every Monday, along with the written transcript and some images. And I have some images about the different gates and how they relate to the zodiac seasons. I'm putting a deck together right now that I'm about to launch on my website. It's kind of about all of the 64 energies, the six mandala 64. So stay tuned for that as well. You can book a reading with me if you want to go deeper on a one-on-one. I have several types of astrology and human design readings available, and you can book those at astrosomatics.com on my website. And if you would like to get some goodies and support my writing and this project, you can become a paid subscriber on Substack for just $8 a month. It's part of the Embody the Revolution membership, where you get access to these monthly breathwork sessions and big, lovely PDFs about the season ahead. I have one from Aries season all the way through Leo season right now, which are just, nice reflections, journaling prompts, somatic exercises, the whole deal about the season. And that's about it. I hope you join me for one of these things, dive a little deeper, and I appreciate you listening and reading so much. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week.